Hey there, Hot Hardware friends and our fellow tech geeks. This is Shannon with Hot Hardware, and we are taking a look at Battlefield RTX today. Now, we did do a lot of work in the background of this game. In other words, looking at the initial day one implementation of RTX. We were super stoked to get you all the information. Right as we started to put it together, NVIDIA and DICE dropped on us the new Tides of War Chapter 1 Overture update, which supposedly offers some pretty sizable gains. So we want to take a look at that. So now we're not just giving you the day one RTX performance, whether it's performance hit, performance gains, but overall before and after. We want to see what the day one experience was like and what you're going to see now. And this is a pretty quick turnaround. This is a couple weeks, and we've got a massive update that supposedly gives you some really good performance. So with that, we're going to dive in with the RTX 2080 Ti on Ultra, Low, and then RTX Off. Now the reason we're doing that is because previous to the patch, there was a bug where anything above Low, so Medium, High, Ultra, all represented similar performance and some pretty bad detriments as far as the overall RTX implementation and the performance you saw. So therefore, we're going to stick to that. But in the written part of the review, which this video will be embedded in as well, and we'll likely link to in the description, we want to make sure that we can represent as much as possible as far as the RTX Medium, RTX High, to show the scalability and what the visual differences are. So take a look at the written article as well if you want to see all the different visual effects. We'll definitely go a lot more in depth in how RTX works, what the different ways that they do the calculations within RTX. We are already seeing some definite performance improvements. Here is the visual settings that we are using. We are going 1440p still for the RTX 2080 Ti. We will actually be experimenting with 1440p on the 2080 now, because supposedly the performance should be good enough that you could actually get that. We once again, just like the pre-testing, we are chromatic aberration, film grain, vignette, and lens distortion will be turned off, because some of these effects actually can cause small artifacting look appearances, especially on the film grain and things like that, where it may make it look like the RTX features or the DXR reflections are not necessarily correct, or even possibly having some noise in them, and we want to show the best representation possible of the visuals you can get. Now go to the Advanced tab. You can see we have DX12 enabled. That's required for DXR. DXR is enabled. Basically, we have vertical sync off, have it set for custom. Basically, these are all ultra settings, but we have to set it for custom so that we can adjust our DXR ray trace reflection quality. So we'll be doing ultra, low, and then DXR completely off, which will be very similar to what you will see with a 10 series card or any other non-DXR compatible card. And so we want to give you an idea of what kind of performance scaling you're going to see, and even more so, what kind of detriment you're going to see by using DXR. So let's dive in with the 2080 Ti and see exactly what this thing has to offer, what DXR/RTX has to offer, and does it create an enjoyable experience? Does the eye candy merit the performance hit? Let's jump in, guys. RTX 2080 Ti, Founders Edition. This is on 1440p Ultra. You can see straight out of the gate, we're already getting some higher FPS. Rough guesstimate, about 20% or so from what we're seeing. Visual details, as far as reflections out the window, quite similar. Seeing the wafting of the snow, good reflection quality. Okay, that guy kind of changes position each time you run this. So that's one of the variables we have to deal with each time we run this test. Is this map, the guys kind of load a little differently each time, especially that first guy. There we go. So as you can see, 1440p, Ultra RTX effects or DXR effects, we are seeing very stable FPS at north of 60 FPS, even 70 FPS. Okay, that should be the last guy I got to deal with for our run here. Alright. Oh, caught myself on fire just a little. Got some cool flame effects off of the weapon. Overall DXR effects look quite similar, maybe a little cleaner. Take a look in the reflection of the mirror here. Being on Ultra, I expect a lot of the reflections to be highly detailed. So I'm basically looking for the most reflective parts of the map. Okay, yeah, that wire is still in the reflections, kind of awkward here from what we've seen. The reflection of these tanks, definitely something you can see with the Ultra reflection type, and you'll see the degradation of that as we go to lower settings. Yeah, the tree reflection, apparently that tree is just far enough away that it doesn't necessarily want to draw it in crazy realism. The mountains look pretty nice and crispy in the back. Okay, let's see the flame reflection on the ground. Okay, full field of reflection. Far away you can see the flames actually reflecting and licking off of the gun itself. You can see some reflections off certain parts of the vehicle on some key reflection areas. You can see the reflection behind me, even off of the vehicle down here. Okay. I'm going to get a little further away for these barrels. Yeah, see, you can see the... Whoa. Okay. You can see the reflection all through the ice here. This is going to be the Shannon hopefully not catching on fire simulator right now. Just so you understand, catching on fire, running by fire in this game can happen quite easily. As you can see, the area effects, you can see the reflection like between the large tank here and the large building in between here. So now we're going to try to give us a nice view of these, since I just put massive amounts of explosives. Oh, come on, dude, don't mess with me. You can see I put a massive amount of explosives here. So, blow it up, you can see some very, very good, like, large fields of reflections. There you go, all through the ice. No breakup, none of that. Yeah, see, all through the ice here. And as you get the right angle on it, you can actually see the reflection of the flames. Like right here, should be good. There you go. So you can see not just a point reflection, but the actual flame licking. That's a huge plus. That basically, it's something similar to what we saw in the previous testing. Seems like visual quality is very similar. Ultra, obviously, on RTX is going to be the hardest on your GPU. Now let's go ahead and check out RTX Low, see what this has to offer. And now we have the 2080 Ti at DXR or RTX settings low, and this is 1440p once again. And as you can see, we're sitting right around an average of, let's say, 85 or so FPS. So that is about right now. Yeah, we're seeing a bit higher, not necessarily as big of a jump from the Ultra. So that tells me NVIDIA definitely made some optimizations there as far as the Ultra preset to make it not as taxing on performance, as we saw a decent gain. Overall about 20-ish%, maybe a little more, right around 22%. This one seems to be, so far, same effect on the window, very similar. Quality doesn't seem to be degraded in any way in that very strong reflection. Hey, you saw me, good. Hey, your helmet came off, please die. Ow. Every time that guy's in a different place. Good stuff. There we go. That's what we needed. There he is. Okay, he's done. Now we can not worry about that dude. So let's take a look at how exactly this affects the... Okay, now we've got to get a lot closer for the reflections to hit the weapon. Doesn't seem to illuminate quite as wide of a field of view, so that's very similar to what we saw in the previous image quality for low on the previous implementation. Looks like the... looks like overall the crispness of the reflection in pure reflective surfaces thus far for like mirrors. Yeah, see, same broken up of the line going there. So this looks visually similar on extreme. Okay, there we go. There's our difference, just like we saw before. See that kind of browning or like tan color? That's the reflection of these tanks, but you'll notice it's much more matted ice. Definitely a thing. Take a look. Yeah, the tree is still kind of garbled, and that's the tree right back there. So definitely under reflection, it seems like they do take into account how far away it is as far as how much reflection you want to give. Let's take a look. Now at the tanker explosion, you saw there were several pixels of ice that showed reflection. But overall, yeah, so you see the flame licking. It's much more selective as far as how far the reflection will show in the ice. It seems like much more of the ice is matted rather than being reflective at this point. There you go. There you go. You can see kind of the striations through the ice as far as which areas are considered reflective by the DXR calculation. That explains why you get more FPS just by changing this to low, because it considers less items highly reflective. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take a look. Now the red building, obviously, once again pixelated. This is all very similar to what we saw before. There you go. See the explosion? It's lighting up very select pixels. It's lighting up very specific areas. We will discuss that more in the written part of the review, because I don't want to spend 20 minutes explaining how this is calculated. But there are mathematical formulas as far as how it considers items to be reflective for RTX tech. We'll also have a lot more side-by-side imagery to show you like static in-game shots or screenshots. So be sure to check that out so that you can see kind of some more detail on different areas beyond what we've shown you here. So now let's take a look at what DXR image quality looks like outside of RTX. Just basic rasterized like you'd see on any other card. Now we have 2080 Ti at 1440p with no DXR. So this is pure rasterization performance. And you can definitely tell that just by the simple fact that we're north of 120 FPS, just, cranking out frames. It's not even an issue here. And yeah, you could definitely tell the reflection showing like the hills behind us is now gone. The reflectivity, the wafting of the snow, it's all not there. This is similar to what we saw previously with this, so this makes probably very little difference. We're still going to test it to see exactly where this thing lands. Oh, there you are. Wow, single shot. Nice. No. I need to blow those barrels up. Get out of there. Nice. Come on, where you at, buddy? Where you at? There you go. That potato aim, though, that is so bad. Alright. Okay, now just like before, yeah, it kind of simulates like, almost like a low RTX effect. Because you still can see, you get some reflection, you get some kind of ideas like you have a single point light source. But normally, if you're sitting like this, you wouldn't necessarily get the reflection like we saw before. So that's a pretty big giveaway that, DICE is doing a pretty good job at faking some of these lighting effects, but it's definitely not as successful as we saw with the RTX enabled. Yeah, see, the mirrors are now blobs. There's simply that scaffolding back here is nowhere to be found. Nothing in the reflective surfaces. Take a look at the windshield here, see if we see any magic. Well, there's probably glass there. Can't really tell. I'm not sure if DICE now thinks we are vampires because I have no reflection. So that's kind of indicative of what we expect. You can see some very muddy effects, just like different lights, or not even lights, different colors, just like meshes, like darker colors or light kind of mimicking like the clouds in the sky, but just nothing like what you get with the other effects. Oh good, truck's transforming, because that needs to happen. Yeah, the ice is fully matte now. No reflection whatsoever. Oh, Come on, there you go. Yeah, some point light reflection, nothing amazing. Still get some cool like light reflection off the gun. That's just kind of their way of like faking it with the individual light sources. You can actually see the sources of the lights if you look at it. You can see where it's coming from here and here. It's basically just got like a small program to basically point lights. You can also see it if you back up. You can see the individual light source just reflecting back, but it has none of the flame licking you saw before. It's just it's either dimming or brightening based on that. Then yeah, point light source once again, nothing to grab your attention too crazy. Now let's blow the truck up, because you know that's a thing. Whatever you said, I'll take you for that. Take you for your word. Yeah, see, it kind of fakes some of the buildings, like right here. Like if you look there, kind of fakes like in a reflection. So that's one thing. They do a good job of faking it. So if you don't have RTX tech, you still can get some cool visuals as far as a first-person shooter aspect. So I'm gonna blow this guy up. Yeah, see, no flash at all on the ice. You get the small point lights. Yeah, see, you get your individual point lights based on where the flame sources are seen from the game. Can't even get this one. There we go, in frame. Oh, stop it. Yeah, see, no real reflection from the ice, just individual like lights. That means if you have something like a 1080 Ti or 1080 or whatever card, basically pure rasterization card, no RTX effects, that's the kind of lighting you're going to get. You can see, you know, you get some like some kind of reflection off the and I'm on fire. Cool. You get some reflective lighting, kinda, but it's not necessarily as accurate or representative of true like reflections like you get with the RTX ones we've seen previously. Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to swap cards. We're going to drop down to the 2080, see what kind of respective performance you're going to expect from that. I'm not going to go through the full demo of lighting and all that stuff, because the effects you see here, we've already done some testing, and the visual representation is exactly the same. Ultra to Ultra, 2080, 2070, any RTX card is going to show you the exact same visuals as I just showed you on the 2080 Ti. And now we have the RTX 2080, and this is still testing at 1080p based on the fact that our previous testing had to be at 1080p. As you can see, we're averaging in the 80s to 90s, where the overall average when we tested this was right around 88.7 FPS, which means it can easily handle 1080p with the RTX settings to Ultra. And it's worth noting that we did test at 1440p, however we didn't have a before test because before the patch it simply wasn't enough of a playable frame rate to consider it reasonable for most people. And now it can definitely hold over 60 FPS average, and it will have lows dipping into like just below 40, which while some may consider that kind of unplayable, it really doesn't get any choppies until you get into the 20s. So overall, with a minimum in excess of like over 35, it's really playable overall. Whoop, we gotta take care of this guy real quick. So basically, the visuals will all be the same on your RTX setting, whether it's whether you're on a 2080 Ti, 2070, or 2080 with Ultra versus versus low versus it being off. It really is inconsequential. So whatever card you have, it's going to all look the same. So there's no point in making a bunch of videos focusing on all those when it's really not necessary. As you can see, on Ultra quality, it looks just the same as you saw on 2080 Ti, albeit a little lower frame rate. Actually, being 1080p, it's going to be pretty high. But if we were to be running 1440 all the same, it would definitely be a bit lower than we saw on the 2080 Ti. So 2080 now has an upgrade because previous to the patch, when it was the day one launch, it would do 1080p at relatively good performance, averaging about, yeah, let's say 76 FPS, I believe, right around there. So it's got about a 15% boost with this patch, which is pretty good overall, with the fact that it's just a game patch and a driver to update, and basically we could see that increasing quite a bit in the future as NVIDIA and DICE has already said that they would be working on improving this as time goes on. So now let's go ahead, we're going to test all the 2070 and see exactly what that offers and what kind of performance hit or gain you will get running RTX on the basically lowest cost of entry at this time into the RTX category. And here we are at 1080p Ultra on the RTX 2070, and this is the lowest cost of entry for RTX at this time. So the RTX 2070 is kind of like the entry point right around $500 or so, and with that you can expect you're not going to get, you know, the 2080 Ti crazy level of performance. Even just standard rasterization games, you're really not going to be pushing 4K with it. But the thing is, with RTX and with this new patch, we did see about a 20% performance uplift on the Battlefield 5 performance. But the biggest surprise, I think, overall, has to do with the minimum frame rate, which we got almost a 62% overall boost compared to what we saw with the pre-patch conditions. Because this thing was dipping pretty low pre-patch with 1080p on everything on Ultra. So, you know, it would be something where you might be getting a little bit of skipping, let's say, with down into the just sub 30s, right around 29 FPS. But, whoops, I'm on fire. That's good. That RTX fire is real. But now, we're seeing, as you can see, we're seeing dips maybe into the 47 range, which means you're not really going to get any choppies. You're not going to get any, you know, any dips in performance that are that bad or noticeable. So this thing can perfectly well play on a nice monitor, even with HDR, let's say, on 1080p, without much of an issue. Which, let's face it, as much as we'd love to tout like 4K performance, most people are still playing 1080p. I mean, Steam Hardware Survey doesn't really lie. It collects the most common resolutions being played on, and so overall, without having to go to the extreme price point of, let's say, you know, $1,200+ RTX 2080 Ti, the 2070 can service you, have plenty playable frame rates at on your 1080p monitor with full RTX on Ultra, graphics settings on Ultra, and you can have an awesome experience. And obviously this has been improved within the first few weeks of Battlefield 5 being out. Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to jump out of this. As you can see, it's plenty playable at 1080p. 1440p might be a little tougher on this. I'm not sure if I'd necessarily recommend it for Ultra settings, but you might even be able to play like mid-level or low-level 1440p on this, depending on what you're willing to omit as far as graphic settings. So that's the 2070. Now let's go ahead and jump out to the conclusion, and we'll talk about how the testing, how the testing went, what kind of uplift you got as far as the new Overture update and Tides of War from Battlefield 5. All right, guys. Now it's time to wrap this up, and I think it's fair to say we've seen a pretty significant performance increase. Now you'll notice that the FPS right now is a bit lower. We are on the 2080 Ti, and to close this out, we're going to show you a little bit of 4K footage while we discuss our conclusion here. Now I think our biggest, most impressive thing really comes from the fact of the minimum FPS. That was what we saw a significant bump, and not necessarily on the 2080 Ti. It was more on the lower end cards like the 2080 and the 2070, where we saw up to a 60% boost in the minimum FPS. So that's actually a pretty significant gain with the RTX features turned on. And it's worth noting that, because when it comes down to it, a lot more people are going to buy those cards than they are going to buy the 2080 Ti. As much as I love the 2080 Ti, it's just not feasible for most users. It's not realistic. So when you're talking a $500, you know, to $800 or $900 card versus a $1,200 card or more, that's pretty significant. Now granted, you do have to temper your expectations. While the 2080 Ti is a 4K capable card, as you saw in our reviews recently from Marco, you will notice that, you know, once you add the RTX features, that was only rasterization. Once you add RTX features in, it does add a bit more load with the hybrid rendering. So overall, most gamers are playing between 1440p and 1080p, mostly actually 1080p. So if you pick up one of these cards, it's going to completely murder 1080p no matter which card you get under standard rasterization. It can pull off RTX at 1080p as we showed, depending on what exactly you're planning to do. So overall, RTX has shown up It was there day one. I do believe NVIDIA did really push out Battlefield to have RTX, like just to get it out as a launch title. And so the fact that they were able to turn an update to get performance vastly improved within less than a month, within a few weeks, that's really good. And you know what the thing is? This is not like just the end-all tell-all. NVIDIA's already said, DICE and EA have already said, they're going to continue working on improving this. Now, as you'll see, just to kind of wrap up the 4K part, the reason we really didn't recommend any of these for 4K is, as you can see, we're hanging into 40s and 30s, even down into the minimums, tapping into 20s. Just, it's going to be a slightly choppy experience. That's why I really like that some of the biggest gains were 2070 and 2080, giving a significant from 30 to 60% plus bump on the minimums, because minimums is where you're going to see all your chop. Yeah, we'd all love to see averages 120, 150 FPS, but it's just not reasonable with this brand new tech. So with tempered expectations, I really feel like the RTX is something that's really cool. And the biggest thing is being the tech geeks we are, we love to see new tech. We love to see it come out. We love to play with it. We love to see how it's going to create a much better immersive experience for our gaming. So with that, guys, be sure to check out the written review where we'll actually dive into more detail as far as the math or calculations they use to calculate the RTX, to see exactly how they figure out what needs to be shown here in this mirror, or what needs to be shown, you know, as far as your body, you know, here. I'd really like to see it change stance, like when you go ADS. That would be kind of cool, because it's still ray tracing, but it's just not ray tracing every movement. So that's kind of interesting to see where that goes in the future. Either way, guys, if you like this kind of content, let us know. We love to see what you guys want to see as far as coverage like this or similar coverage. What would you like to see differently? And this was Shannon with Hot Hardware signing off.